branches here tonight. So a minute, I have to get it. Got it. So we have about 4 branches with us tonight. So soon as I finish, we can all mute, or you guys can all mute. And I'm just going to introduce our speaker. Our speaker is Shifra Lowen. She is a mother of 4 wonderful children and the wife of Yohanan Lowen, who is known for his activism for Hasidic children's education. Shifra was raised in the Hasidic village of Kiryas Tosh in the Bois-Brillant, Quebec. From early childhood, she was taught about the 613 commandments that every Jew must follow and about the severe punishments that will come from God for every little transgression. Growing up with such intense fear was hard, and always feeling guilty for messing up and for being human, it was painful. But her greatest adversity turned into her greatest joy, as she's now a life coach for Hasidic and ex-Hasidic people, helping them heal from guilt. Her specialty is helping people replace self-blame with self-love and compassion. Shifra Lowen.
Thank you so much. I appreciate all of you being here. Can you hear me correctly? Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Awesome. So tonight I will share a little bit of my journey, how it was growing up in Kiryas Tosh, and also how it was to leave that place. So it happens to be that yesterday I visited Kiryas Tosh. I live now in Montreal, which is like 45 minutes away from where my parents and my siblings are still residing. And it's a little village of about over 3,500 people, because there's a lot of young kids. Every family is like 10, 12 children. And it was a very interesting experience because I haven't been there for 6 years. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how it was growing up there, which is I was the oldest of 11 children. And my parents moved to Kiryas Tosh when I was a baby. I was originally born in Brooklyn. My mother is from Brooklyn, New York. She was raised in a Satmar family. My father was raised in Montreal, also in a Satmar family. If you don't know the Hasidic community, Satmar is like the most, it's considered the most strictest of all the Hasidic communities. And when I was a baby, my mother decided to go move to Kiryas Tosh because it was literally starting up then. Like it was still like a wilderness, but they started building a few family like garden houses. And my father really wanted to go live there because he had studied with a Tosh Rebbe in his yeshiva and in his high school for the boys. But it's a religious high school. It's nothing secular, no secular studies. So what happened was my father told my mother how much he wanted to go there because he had a vision of raising a family in an isolated place where you are protected from the evil of the world. And my mother bravely agreed to leave her whole family behind. And she moved to Kiryas Tosh, very far away from Brooklyn, in a freezing cold environment. The snow was very high. There was almost nothing there except like a small grocery shop maybe. But everything and anything, she had to travel at least 30 minutes to get to Montreal for a doctor's appointment, dentist, clothing, everything. Now they have a big, nice and flourishing community there. So they have a supermarket, they have lots of stuff. But when I was growing up, it was a very different world than what it is right now. So when I went to school, I was taught from a very young age how important it is to follow all the rules. If you mess up, if you um, make your parents sad, like you don't listen at the first time, if you forget a blessing before you eat, if you by mistake turned off the light on Shabbos, if you brush your hair, God forbid, the punishment for brushing your hair on Shabbos is that you die young. And the teacher explained, it was written in the Satmar book for Hilchos Shabbos, for the rule of Shabbos, that when you have even one hair that you tear out on Shabbos, that already is punishable with dying young. So I was growing up in second grade and having that weight put on me. And I remember when I was a teenager and right before Shabbos, everything was so hurried. My mother cooked up the storm and I was helping her. And then I jumped into the shower right before Shabbos to just get ready for Shabbos. And then I had to make my hair. And I was always racing against the clock because it's almost time. It's almost time. I don't want to die young. And it was such a challenge because like, I wanted to look good for my friends. I'm a teenager. I wanted to but I still don't want it to cost my life, right? So that's the kind of weight that is put on kids. And this is just a very small example. Like we were told horrific stories. I don't want to ruin any of your moods here because I'm not here to share a sad story. I'm here to share an uplifting story. So what happened is when I was 17 years old, my mother sat me down and she told me that a shadchan, a matchmaker, suggested a good boy for me. And actually there were two matchmakers. And she told me one of the boys lives in New York and he is actually a brother to her brother-in-law. So basically her sister praises this guy till the heavens, says that he's an amazing scholar and everything that you wish for in a son-in-law. Then there's another option, she says, and she's pointing to me like across the street, and that was the brother of my best friend. And I was 17 years old, so I am trying my darndest not to show anything on my face because inside I'm jumping with excitement that this is even an option, that my friend's brother, that their family are willing to take me as a daughter-in-law. And I'm like, she's asking me like, what do you feel more like pulled towards? And I told her, I think I would maybe go with that one, with a friend's brother. And I had to act very mature because otherwise my mother, at least that's what I thought, my mother would think like she's just a kid, she doesn't know. I had to hide my excitement. She's gonna think that I just want to marry that guy because it's my friend's brother. And it was true actually, like because it was my friend's brother, I knew him a little bit. We were not supposed to talk, right? It's extremely segregated. So not only you're not allowed to talk to the opposite sex, you're not even allowed to like gaze at each other. Like if I walked by mistake into a room where he was, I would right away exit the room. You're not supposed to be in the same room. But even though we were neighbors, right? So he passed by my house to go to the synagogue, and I would have this feeling like he's such a gentle soul, and to go marry some stranger from New York that I don't even know, it was such a delight to know that I can marry somebody that I already have a good feeling about. And then we were waiting for the matchmaker to negotiate all the terms and conditions, how I'll wear my head covering and all kinds of stuff. And then finally one day she tells me that tonight we're gonna have the show, they call it, like the official date. And the date is not about getting to know each other because it's all on the parents to make all the research, if it's a good match. And the girl just walks in blindly, trusting her parents, trusting God that this is a match made in heaven. And she just has to go through the motions of sitting through like a 20-minute chat or 30 minutes or whatever it is, talking about like silly stuff. How many kids do you have in your family? Where do you live? Like silly stuff, nothing. Actually, my show was very memorable because he had prepared some insights, and I was always like, I loved learning. So I was really enjoying that he shared some insights from the holy books and stuff like that. And I wanted it to last as long as possible. And he had begged his father to cut it off as soon as possible because it was extremely stressful. You're not allowed to talk all your life to the opposite sex. And now you're just stuck in a room and you have to figure out how to make conversation. And the girl is not supposed to make a conversation. It's all on the boy. She's not allowed to start. So it's like so much pressure. So we had the opposite experience. He I don't know if he didn't enjoy it, but like he was stressed that his father should already end it. And I was praying aside that it should go on, Finally, it was interrupted, and my parents asked me, so what do you say? And of course you say yes, because that's what you say. Unless there's something outrageous, you say yes, So I'm engaged to be married in a year later. But in the interim, there's no talking to each other. There's no seeing each other. There's not even, I just remembered today a funny incident where my husband to be was talking to one of his mentors right in front of his house. And we were neighbors, right? So I would peek out on the porch and then run back in because he's not allowed to see me. Like there's so much restriction. And I was like so excited to see him like up front, because here was like a view where I can actually see him enjoying vivacious conversation, with his mentor. And I'm like peeking and running back, and I just remembered it today, actually. So what happened was, after a year, we got married. And what do you think is the preparation for the marriage? We have, I think, 7 weeks of Kala lessons. So the Kala lessons is the teacher for the bride, who prepares her with all the rules that she has to follow in married life. Taharas hamashpacha, the purity of the Jewish home. And there's no mention of sex. I had no clue. Like when I got engaged, I had no clue what I'm signing up for. I just knew I'm signing up for building a family together, right? I have no clue about anything. After you go through the 7 weeks with your mentor, you usually have that mentor or a different mentor who prepares you for the actual act. Luckily, I was blessed that my mother took that role. Although she was scared shitless, she took that role of teaching me about sex. And that was such a brave act, because usually you delegate it to the teacher, who is the professional. Why she did that, what I think is because a few weeks before I had to have my lesson, I had another classmate who almost had a nervous breakdown because the teacher was so unprofessional the way she taught it to her. And this kid was so naive, and she came home and she just couldn't wrap her head around this idea that not only she's going to have to live with the opposite sex and get to know that person, but now she's going to have to let them have access to her body in such a way that is perceived as so low life. Like it's extremely contradictory to everything that you're taught up until then, right? And it was a serious case with that friend, where it was like 3 weeks before her wedding, and she was not just a mess, but like literally she almost had a nervous breakdown. So my mother didn't want that to happen to me, and that's why I believe she took it upon herself. And even then, right there, when she explained it all to me, which she did in such a wonderful way, even then, on the spot, I thanked her profusely for taking this on, because I felt so at ease to know that I'm not hearing it from a stranger, like she is actually the one who is sharing that with me. So the night of the wedding was actually a very lovely experience for me, But again, my husband had the opposite experience because he was taught all the rules that he has to follow, and very contradicting rules. Because on the one hand, you are taught you have to be extremely holy, extremely like there's a book that is always referred to in the Haredi and the Hasidic communities, which is the Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch suggests that when you do sex, you do it like you are a demon, like you just go in and out and you run away because it's so not holy, supposedly. It doesn't explain it that way. It's like it's not holy, but it's interpreted that way in the community. So my husband knows what the Shulchan Aruch says, and his teacher says you got to be gentle. He's a gentle soul anyways, but his teacher is like telling him like certain things that he has to do. But also, it's the first night of his life with his bride, and he is told that it's gonna hurt. So like imagine that pain and stress that you have to hurt your bride the first night of the wedding and try to do it the least possible, and like there's so much put on him, right? But the way he went about it was so lovely. Like he sat me down at a chair and he like pulled me closer. He put his hand on my shoulder. It was like a beautiful letter that he read to me from a mentor from Israel that he really highly admires. And that was like the way that he the introduction. And then we went and we did the act. And then the parents asked the next day, so was it successful? Was it not? It's a lot of ritualistic experiences. It's not, you don't have sex for joy at all. You have it to procreate. And it's expected to have it the night of the wedding because you are expected to be together to start a family right away. You don't have a choice of birth control. As a matter of fact, my teacher who taught me all the purity laws, one of the laws was that you are never supposed to have any birth control, and the extreme severity of that. And even if you have a medical problem, you got to go to the rabbi for permission to do that. So even though I wasn't emotionally, financially, or in any way prepared to be a mother, I was expected to start a family right away, right? So luckily, I didn't get pregnant as fast, so I had a chance to get to know my husband. And at 21, I had my first child. When my first child was 3 years old, my husband came home with a very wild idea. Since in this community, we need to teach the children to make a blessing before they eat, to not to touch things that are not, like toys that make an alarm or stuff like that on Shabbat, all kinds of different rules that we have to follow. He wants us to teach that to our children in a gentle way we should never hit the children. And this was like a thunder in the middle of the day without any warning. Like, what is he talking to me about? Like, how can you raise pious children without hitting them? I was taught from a very young age that if your parents love you, they hit you, because that's the only way. That's what scripture says. You have to hit your child in order for them to grow up God-fearing Jews. So I was like almost mad at him for suggesting that. Like, how do you expect me to take on this new way of raising our kids when you don't have any proof that this is gonna work? I don't want to jeopardize my children's soul, and they should grow up like wild animals, as our teacher warned us what would happen if you don't raise your children with hitting. So like, what am I exchanging here? The risk of having my son grow up a wild animal without any values, and here I have a trodden out path. Like, it worked for my parents, it worked for my grandparents. Like, why do I need to change? Why do I have to fix something that's not broken, you know? So he was extremely patient and extremely gentle, and he took out a big sefer, a big holy book from the bookcase, and he showed me how the sages, how the holy leaders from the past wrote about this concept, and they said that until a child is 6 years old, you have to spoil the child. You have to give them the best experience ever, because this is the most essential years of their life. This builds their character. And it made sense to me. And he was talking logic. So it's like, then he showed me another book that says, like, if you hit your child, you are worse than if a stranger hit them, because if a stranger hits them, they can still come to you for help and protection. But you who is supposed to protect your child, if you do that cruelty to your child, who are they going to go to for protection, right? And all this was sinking in, and it made such perfect sense to me. And I'm like, okay, so till the 6 years old, we have to spoil him, and we're not supposed to hit him. Okay, it makes sense. But how am I going to deal with my parents? Like, they see like I have like a new way, like I'm going to be considered like I don't know if an outcast, but like something is wrong with me, that I'm a very pious young woman, and like, what's going on? Why am I veering off the path of what everybody is doing? So, but still, like, logic is a one, and I was like, yeah, I want the best for my kids, of course. So I started doing that, and it was bitter hard, because you gotta train a toddler to like a really young kid to follow so many rules, and you have no punishment. You're used to only that frame of raising kids. So no reference and no access to libraries, no access to any child rearing books. So I'm like, what am I gonna do here? Like, I was literally like in the dark. And on the other hand, when I was a little kid, when I was in grade 1, I think, there was a big poster in the school that said, you're not supposed to go to a library, not even a Jewish library. The Jewish one are even worse. Like, don't be fooled by that. Don't be fooled because it says a Jewish library that you can go to it. A library is a place where the devil can taint your soul. Like, it's really not for us. So imagine, like, from a young age, I'm so scared of a library. And then one day, my husband went to a library. And I like have to grapple with that. On the one hand, I know, I trust him. He's a pious young man, and he is not going to go there to find, how do you call it, non-kosher books. But where did he go? He went to the Jewish Public Library here in Montreal. But on the other hand, I didn't want anybody to find out, especially not my parents. Like, they're going to think the worst of it, because for them, it's like really stepped out of line, you know? So as I was getting deeper into this new way of living, the people in power got a whiff of it. The people in power started like keeping an eye on us. Like, we are just having our own way, and that's a big threat. You cannot open a new path for people then are going to follow. You know, the control is gonna break, right? You have control when everybody is uniform, when everybody follows the same rules, nobody tries to think differently. But if somebody is free thinking, then they're opening a window for everybody else to think for themselves. So eventually my husband was persecuted.
Is it mute?
My husband was
I
persecuted.
don't hear her.
Oh, is everybody hearing me?
Wait a bit, wait.
Please mute yourself.
So my
Turn
husband
your
was,
iPhone.
I think the host can do that, but I'm not sure how.
The host can.
Flo, you gotta mute yourself. The speaker can't talk. Okay, she did.
Okay. So my husband was persecuted. He had people in the community hang up a big poster in the synagogue on Yom Kippur, it was hanging there. Okay, so they prepared it before Yom Kippur on Shabbat when people were there for the high holidays to visit the Grand Rabbi. So people from all over the world, like from America, from maybe even from England and Israel, who came for the high holidays to be with the Tasha Rebbe. And everybody sees this big poster that slanders his name. And he went to one of the the young rabbis in the shul, and he asked, please have a Gentile take off this poster. It's literally killing me. And the rabbi was, I don't know if it's allowed, blah, blah, blah. He came home that day and he was literally like he has been butchered, like he had been killed. It wasn't, the results didn't show right away, but eventually, like after a very short time, he started losing his vision. And we went to the doctor and he said, my husband has an autoimmune disease and it's called uveitis, and it has attacked his vision from all the stress, from all this heartbreak. This is what developed. And I started being very petrified. What am I going to do here? My husband is losing his vision. We built a family. I have 4 young children, and he's not going to be able to see his own children grow up. Like, I couldn't even wrap my head around it. And like, for me, like to have to end up with a husband who can't see and to be a caregiver, like I was in panic. And on top of that, he started suffering from severe depression, of course, because now everybody in the community was told to stay away from him because he's dangerous, because he can poison their soul. So I knew that I have to move away from Tosh. I have to move away from that community. But where do I go? I don't know anything about the world. I don't know anything about anything except for what I needed to be a mother in that community according to their rules. So I tried to find an apartment through an aunt who lives in New York. I called her up and I begged her, I need to move away. Can you help me find an apartment in Monroe? That was a very strict Satmar community in Monroe, and like just the same as Tosh, but at least we're gonna get away from here. Sadly, she wasn't able to help me. And I was devastated, especially since I started hearing rumors that they're trying to take away my kids. My husband's friend told him in secret that he heard in the grapevine that my husband's father and his family are preparing a case in Child Protective Services. They should have a file about us that supposedly we are incapable of taking care of our children, so that they can confiscate the children and keep them inside in case if we leave. So I was terrorized. I had people at our window, looking into the window, keeping track of everything we do. It was such a nightmare. And I didn't know how to get out. I tried to make Aliyah to Israel. I signed up with OMET in Montreal. They have a department that helps you if you want to make Aliyah. And it didn't pan out. And then finally, I found an apartment in Montreal. And when I moved to Montreal, it was literally like I went out of Egypt. It was literally like the story of Passover. I felt like I can breathe again. I felt like I am free to be a human in this world. Just walking into the pharmacy felt like I went on a safari trip, because I was like, oh my goodness, not 10 eyes on me, looking and trying to control me. I am just a person living my life, and I can take care of my kids. And I was relieved. But the story didn't end there, because in the Hasidic community in Montreal, when I sent my son to the Hasidic cheder, they were hitting the kids. In the cheder, it was a very normal thing. I don't know now They say some Cheders stop doing that. I don't know exactly what's going on in the Cheders now, but in the Hasidic Cheders at the time, it was a nightmare. The kids were being hit day and night, and I'm not hitting my son. And he comes home and he's like, my Rebbe slapped me on the face today, and he was so shaken up. And I called up his Rebbe and I asked him, what's going on? Like, you told me that my son is the best kid in class. Like, what's going on? And he's like, no, don't worry. I just slapped him because the kids were so hyper. It's before Purim. So I just wanted to make a case that they should sit down and they don't have a way to discipline, obviously. So it's like when the Rebbe is in a bad mood, everybody suffers. So my son endured it. And he begged me. He didn't want to go to Cheder. I begged him to go to Cheder because I was alone in a city. What am I going to do? I don't even know how to get to another place for him to be in a normal environment where he can be a kid, in a normal institution where he's not slapped. And I begged him to go to Cheder because I couldn't cope. Like, I just moved to a new city. How am I going to keep him like at home all day for the whole year? And then he finally had enough. One day after Passover, he ran away from Cheder on his own. He was 9 years old. Thankfully, he is very good with maps. So he found his way home, and he comes home, and I said to myself, enough is enough. If he had the courage to run away from Cheder, that's the push that I needed to have the courage as well, and to say, we are gonna figure this out. I don't know how, but you're not going back to that place anymore. And as we are coming to the end of 45 minutes, and I still want to have time if you want to have any questions to ask, I'm just going to make this very long story short, because there was a lot of nightmares still. We had police that broke down our door. We had youth protection that was involved because they tried still to take away the kids. They tried to say, I'm isolating my child. I'm not sending him to Cheder. I was trying to find another place. And every place I called, they were tapping my phone. I didn't know that. And they would call that place, don't accept this family. They're crazy. So they wanted us to have our kids taken away, right? And thankfully, to make a long story short, we were saved of that ordeal through miracles, like real miracles. And the best day of my life was when I finally was able to take my kids to a new school where they could be kids, where they could blossom, where they could learn the ways of the world. They don't have to just be in a box and have everything told to them how they must live their life, and there's no other options. They have options to live their life the way that it feels right for them. So we send them to a Jewish day school that was co-ed, which was the first time in their life that they were in a place, boys and girls together. So the siblings were really happy. They could see each other. And they were learning about the Jewish tradition, which was my goal, because I wanted them to know that there is other ways of being Jewish. They shouldn't be ashamed of their Jewish identity. They should have, for once, a good experience, right? And eventually, my son started in grade 4. He was 10 years old. He started in grade 4. In grade 6, he already had teachers fighting who will give them the certificate, because he was excelling in French without having any information of French before he started, excelling in English, excelling in math, excelling in Hebrew. It was a 3-language school. And imagine in 2 years how he drank it all up, how starved he was for knowledge, right? And then my daughter, when she came to grade 6, she was valedictorian. Like, all of them, they appreciate this change so deeply. and they made the best of it. Now my son is in Toronto. He is studying at U of T, and he's studying math computer science program, and he's hoping to be a math professor. He's extremely good at math. And it's an incredible experience to know that I can give my kids everything that I never had. And for my husband, it's his dream come true. Everybody told him it's not possible. Everybody told him, you can't do this. You can't leave a community and survive this. Especially if you go with your family, you're going to break everything good that you have in your life. And he was determined because he grew up in a very dysfunctional home. And he had a lot of pain, like every kind of pain that you can have in this community, he had. Like for me, I grew up the oldest of 11, but I had a relatively good childhood. For him, he knew exactly what he doesn't want for his kids. He didn't want them to feel like an invalid, that they don't know the language of the land. They can't talk to a doctor. They can't talk to a taxi. And that's the situation for the boys, because the boys are not taught any English. And the girls are a little bit taught a little bit better. So I was able to talk a little bit of English or French. But imagine his delight to prove all these naysayers wrong and make his dream come true, to give his children everything that he always wished to have. And that's how I will wrap it up. And if anybody has a question, I'm here to answer.
Okay, anyone have any questions? I'm going to switch my view. Please, go
Can I
ahead.
ask?
Yes.
What education did you have? You went to school in that part of Quebec. Was it all in Yiddish, or what was it? And what did you learn?
Okay, so for the boys, it's all day long, only Yiddish translation of the Chumash from Rashi and the Gemara. It's no English at all. My husband was taught for one summer a little bit of ABC, that was all. For me, I went to to school from 8 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon. Actually 8:45, I think it started, and there was the first part of the day was Yiddish. So we were taught about the holidays, about all the rules for Shabbat, all the rules of modesty, all kinds of rules that you have to follow. The second part of the day was half English and half French. So 1.5 hour English, 1.5 hour French. And they deliberately chose teachers who will not make it too much fun, because that would be a competition with the Jewish studies. If you have teachers who make the outside world in any way exciting, then you are at risk, right? So what happened was we had the most boring teachers, and whatever we wanted to study, it was only allowed in school. We were told the only reason we are learning English and French is because the government demanded, and we are now in Galus. We are now not we're now in exile. We have to follow the government. So we're not supposed to take those books home. We are not supposed to study any English at home, only in school. So imagine how limited that is, right?
Wow.
I have a question. Hi. Thank you so much for sharing your story, by the way.
You're welcome.
So you're the eldest of 11, and you have, it sounds like you had a wonderful mother who, took care of you. Do you have any relationship with any of your siblings or your family now?
So as I started in the beginning, I said that I went to Curious Tosh yesterday, and I have a wonderful relationship with my mother, although it's not the same kind of relationship that I had before I left, because we don't have a lot in common. We live in 2 different planets, but we do have a strong love for each other. And I spent an hour yesterday sharing memories, good memories that I have. And we had a wonderful time together. And then I went and I visited my sisters, which was a first, because my siblings were all sworn off not to talk to me. I am dangerous. I'm a dangerous influence. But things are slowly but slowly changing in the community. So my oldest siblings, like the ones right after me, the ones that I was closest with, they would call me every day for advice. I literally, like, cold turkey, was not able to talk to them even while I was still in the community. I think it stopped because the moment I became dangerous, they were not, like, their spouses wouldn't let them, you know, they were afraid. The younger ones, though, is different because it's a new generation of, like, more free-spirited people. They're not as indoctrinated anymore because it's a different world we're living in, right? So you got to accommodate something. You got to give them a good enough life inside that shouldn't want to run away, right? What happened is that my younger sisters, they're not allowed to call me, but if I came to visit them yesterday, so far so good. Like, they let me into the house. I saw my nieces and nephews. I had a nice time of like 20 or 30 minutes, and I went back home.
So just to follow up, did you have to get permission to go back to Tosh? Did you tell them in advance you were coming, or did you just surprise them?
So that is a wonderful question, because I used to surprise my mom, because when I go there, I don't go like this. I go dressed in the whole garb, the whole 9 yards, like a scarf on my head, a long dress, long sleeves, a brown thick tights, like the whole 9 yards. Even when I went I was invited a couple of years ago to a simcha, which is not something that I'm invited to normally. Okay, we are, like, officially, I'm not supposed to go to any weddings, anything. And this was an exception. I was invited to a simcha, and I was getting ready, and my sister-in-law was like, "Can you please take off those earrings and put on the Hasidic earrings, like the round ones? The hanging ones is like already, it's gonna cause too much pain." But I'm so, you know what I mean?
Thank you. Thanks for your questions, your answers.
Shifra, I have a question.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you for being so honest.
You're welcome.
And I'm just wondering, what level of orthodoxy are you living right now? Like, how did you, because I'm thinking of the TV show, like My Unorthodox Life, and that is just so far out there. Like, I know that that's scripted, but it's like, what level are you, level are you living at? And are you okay with that, and your husband? And
yes, so I left Orthodoxy altogether. I am now a member of Reconstructionist Synagogue.
that's a big change.
Reconstructionist.
Yes. And it was really a life-saving experience, because when I had this whole trauma with the police breaking my door, I told myself, I don't want any of this. I had enough, like, already in touch with all the trauma. And then I left, and I thought I'm gonna have a better life in Montreal with the Hasidim there. And again, so much torture. It was just like, I was burnt out. I don't want to hear anything anymore. And then my husband came and told me about Reconstructionists. And I was first so against it. Like, don't tell me about any synagogue. Everybody is going to want to put me in a different box. I'm done with boxes. I want to live my life peacefully. I'm not bothering anybody. Live and let live. That's my motto. And then I came for a visit to Reconstructionists when he begged me so much, and I was doing him a big favor. That's what I thought. And I'm like so pleasantly surprised. The people are not like posh, fancy that I have to like dress up and be formal with. Like, so down to earth and so friendly. And it was life-saving, because they became like a new family for my kids. They celebrate all the accomplishments. My kids had their bar and bat mitzvah in that synagogue, and it's an incredible experience.
I think it's wonderful that you and your husband are on the same page to
Absolutely.
move forward together. That's really important.
Absolutely.
Good for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Melissa, I would imagine that that would be very rare for a husband and wife to leave that together with
Yes.
their children. You know, most of the things you either read or see on TV, as Melissa said, are, you know, splits between husbands and trouble getting the kids. And yeah, so that is very unique.
Yes,
That-
so to go on that, but before I want to answer first the question somebody asked in the chat how my husband's health is. So it has improved a lot since we left the community, because if you don't add stress, the body naturally starts healing, right? But of course, every day, how do you call it? Every day we pray for more improvement. Like his eyes are still like the doctors told us that the best thing we can hope for is that there shouldn't be any recurrence of attacks on his vision. You know, that's like the best we can hope for. That's what they said. But as far as yeah, so we pray every day for better health. That's basically my answer. And going on what you said, Sharon, about nobody normally leaving with their partner. It's very much so because you are in an arranged marriage. You are usually not in a marriage that you chose, right? So they're usually already starting out at odds because they are from extremely different worlds, segregated, and just to live in a peacefully in one home is already an accomplishment. So let alone to make a transition and to just change everything up, you know? And I was really lucky because, as I said in the beginning, my mother actually asked me what I prefer of the two matches, right? And I had the chance to marry such a gentle person that I related to right away. Like even at the first date, I felt at home with him already. I felt safe. And we started with a good foundation. So he was able to gently and extremely patiently, I mean, I didn't tell you the whole story, obviously, because it's just 45 minutes, but it took many years till he made all these changes for me, because I was extremely afraid of making changes. I had a lot to lose. And every change that he wanted to make, he had to have tremendous patience, and he did, you know? So what happened after he proved all the naysayers wrong, that other people were inspired. People from Israel called us and tell us that because they heard our story, they too were able to make the transition with their wife. They thought that it was impossible because nobody has done it before. But because we were able to go with our children together as a couple, people started realizing that it is possible sometimes, not always. Sometimes if you're at odds with your spouse, then of course it's not something that normally works out. But sometimes if you happen to have built a good relationship, maybe it can work, you know?
So you're really an inspiration to others. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Are you thinking of writing a book or anything, or
Yes,
about
yes.
your
I'm actually working on a book right now.
wondering?
If anybody wants, I can put in the chat. I have an email address where if anybody wants updates about my book, you can send me an email there and I'll keep you posted. Just a second.
That would
Excuse
be
me,
great.
Shifra.
Yes.
I'm wondering how economically did it work out for you? Because you probably didn't have much money when you left.
Correct. So I was lucky that I ended up not moving to New York, because in Canada, at least they give you family allowance, and in Quebec too. So that was a bit of a help. And then I went to a Hasidic college that they have here in Montreal, which is basically a place to learn to learn a career that is allowed, like to be a bookkeeping or to be a daycare teacher. So I learned how to be a daycare teacher, but the way that it works in a Hasidic college, you don't have to have a high school diploma, which I didn't have, obviously. You can just fake it. So you can just give them like a certificate of anything, and as if you have a high school diploma. So I printed something out that my friends showed me that you can do, and that's how I got enrolled. But As soon as I finished
Hello?
my course, you still hear me?
Middle of
Okay.
June.
So as soon as I finished my course, which I got bursaries and loans for,
I'm just listening to a thing. My group has this Hasidic, this very religious woman from Quebec who left the Hasidim.
Hey,
And
Terry,
community.
Terry,
Uh,
mute
not-
yourself, Terry.
What's the other one?
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
Not even reform, no,
Can the host
we,
not
uh,
mute everybody?
yeah,
I can mute.
she's giving a speech. She's almost finished now. I didn't think you'd be interested, and I should have said
Who-
it to you.
Oh my God.
She was
Who
very
is
interested.
speaking?
Terry.
It's Terry.
Terry?
Terry. Yeah, she was from Quebec. It's okay. It's almost finished
Oh my
anyway.
God, I
She's
can't find her on
from
the list.
Quebec.
Can you
And-
just mute everybody
No,
and then maybe
cannot.
Shifra can unmute?
And then to Montreal.
awesome. That was a clever idea. Okay, so I am putting it into the chat, the email. So anybody who wants to copy and paste this email can send me an email and I will keep you posted about my book.
What
What
about
was-
your, sorry, Shifra, what about your husband? Was he trained also to do something
So
other
here's the
than
thing, when
study?
I got trained to be a daycare teacher,
Yeah,
at the very end, when I finally finished my internship and everything, I was told that Quebec came out with a new law that you cannot be a daycare owner if you don't have a DEC. You cannot just with an attestation certificate be a daycare teacher. You can only be an assistant daycare teacher. So
okay.
all my plans of having a career as a daycare teacher was out the window because as a young mother, I didn't have time now to go for a GED to go study my high school diploma in order to be able to do this. So I started taking French classes with immigrants so I can at least have more options to go to daycare because the from people, the very religious people won't take me in their daycare as an assistant. And after I learned French, and I realized that all the daycares that would hire me for an assistant are not going to give me a lot of pay because I need to feed a family and it's not going to match up. I finally got an offer from OMES, the Jewish organization, who said, come and learn with us how to be a caregiver, which will give you freedom because you have more flexible hours. You can make your own hours. And it's going to be a higher pay. You can get up to $22 an hour. And I trained as that. That didn't pan out either because it wasn't true that you can just go to $22 an hour. People charge $15 an hour. Maybe you can work yourself up with a lot of years of working, but it wouldn't feed my family. So I can't go down a road that's just going to be a rat race, right? So I started doing life coaching online and building a business for helping Hasidic and ex-Hasidic people who want to go through the healing journey of relieving themselves of all this guilt and all this fear that I had already done a lot of healing for myself. So I was able to start helping other people.
And what about your husband?
So my husband is a teacher for Hebrew, teaching like if people want to learn how do you call it, Gemara and other stuff, whatever they like to learn more in depth. He's an amazing teacher, and he's also like if somebody needs for bar mitzvah and stuff like that. And he's also a teacher for Yiddish, so he has people who want to learn Yiddish and he also is an author. He's writing a book.
Are you still friends with your friend, with his sister?
So I am not allowed to be friends with her anymore. Like she is very afraid if she keeps up any friendship with me, then it's going to be a revolt against her father, who is so brokenhearted that we left, because she has to take her father's side. If we left, we brought shame on the family, and if she's continues any relationship with me, it's kind of like disrespecting her father.
Anyone have any other questions? Absolutely fascinating, Shifra. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just been so interesting. I really appreciate you coming tonight. I'm sure we all do, and for being so open and positive with your answers is great. Thank you. Just
Sorry, can I ask one last question? I just
Please.
wanted to ask before, I wanted to ask about if there was ever any police involvement
Yes.
with, because that would constitute abuse and hitting and, in homes and in schools. So I was just wondering about that. Sorry to interrupt.
Yes, so we filed a lawsuit. My husband is an activist for the Hasidic children to have an education and to not have all this abuse going on. So we filed a lawsuit in 2016. And last year we had our hearing in court. And the judges ruled that things are changing, so they can't convict anybody here.
Shifra, can I ask a
Yes.
question?
Yes.
Is it you and your husband who are suing the government for not enabling you to have a secular education?
Yes.
Bravo.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. So do you think that your lawsuit is why they are changing?
I believe it's part of because of that, because we always need help from both sides. There has to be a will to change, and there also has to be a pressure sometimes, right? Because change is not an easy thing. So the world is changing. So there is that pressure. And then there was also the government pressure. So they are doing some changes, not nearly as fast as needed. And there's still a lot of thousands of children who are indoctrinated every day about the worst and horrific kind of punishment that they're going to get for any little misdeed that is basically being human,
Okay. Well, thank you again. And I'd like to thank everyone for joining us, all the branches, and thanks for coming. And it's been a fascinating evening. Thank you so much, Shifra.
You're so welcome. And thank you all so much for being here. It was a pleasure. And I hope I can get the recording, right?
Yes.
Karen? Yeah.
Yes, I'll send it to you, Shelley, and you can forward it wherever you'd like.
Do you have Laura? Send it to Laura.
Okay.
Laura Chaifetz.
Thank you for inviting us. It was a fascinating evening.
Thank you
Yes,
so much.
just great.
you.
Thank
Good
you.
Thank you. Be
Thank you.
well.
It was
Lots of
wonderful.
fun.
Shifra, I
Thank
wish you and your family all the best.
Yes,
Thank you.
definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was very interesting.
Thank you. I appreciate it.